continually serving, latruo. It can be translated worship. It has to do with temple service. The God who I continually worship through my service with a clear conscience or a clean conscience. What does that mean? It means that the faculty of self-judgment, which is the conscience, is not accusing him. It's not accusing him. It's not pointing out some sin of which he is guilty and for which he should die or be imprisoned or be chained. No. He says, I've done a self-examination. I'm not perfect, but I have dealt with the sin in my life and confessed it to God. And as much as is possible in this world, I am living in holiness before the Lord, and my conscience is clean, and I am continually serving God through the worship that I offer to Him. It's almost as if he wants to remind Timothy and everyone else who might say, well, he's probably there because God is chastening him. You know, they did say that about his first Roman imprisonment, and he reacts to that in Philippians chapter 1, and perhaps there were others who were saying it again. There was nothing in his heart accusing, nothing in his heart throwing things in his face. By the way, in 1 Timothy 1:5, he had told Timothy, the goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart and a good conscience. Chapter 3, verse 9, he said, hold to the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. And then he talks in chapter 4 about men who had seared their conscience like putting scar tissue on it with a branding iron by constantly rejecting the truth of God. His conscience was clear. As I said, it is the self-judging faculty. It's the thing that condemns or does not condemn you when you act. And he's saying, here I am in prison, waiting to die. My conscience is clear. All the accounts are right with God. And I have faithfully and continually served God. Then he says, the way my forefathers did. Who does he mean there? Who are his forefathers? Well, we can't know for sure because he doesn't say. Some think the Old Testament saints. He has in mind Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Isaiah, Daniel, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. The great Old Testament saints who were his Jewish forefathers. Some say he means his own family. He remembers in Philippians chapter 3 his heritage. He was a Hebrew of the Hebrews, a Pharisee, zealous of the law, and he'd received that from his own father and his own family, and maybe he was referring to them. But on the other hand, thirdly, it may be that he's referring to the other apostles who were in a spiritual sense his forefathers, James and Peter and John and Philip and Nathaniel and Bartholomew and the rest who truly served the Lord Jesus Christ and were his spiritual forefathers. But since he doesn't say who he means, we can assume that he means all who have gone before him faithfully serving God, whether they were Old Covenant or New Covenant. So he is saying, I'm serving the Lord faithfully with a clear conscience, just like all those who faithfully served him in the past have done. As if to say, and if you check the record on them, some of them have died the same way I'm about to die also. So before you accuse me of being punished for my sin, you better check back through the annals of the chronologue of the saints of God and find that many of them suffered for righteousness' sake as well. It would do well for us, if we question that, to read the 11th chapter of Hebrews. So there he is in a dungeon, thanking God, the God he has faithfully served as an act of worship like his forefathers all the days of his ministry. His conscience is clear. Nothing accuses him. And in those moments, as he thinks about Timothy, he thanks God for this beloved young man. That is a wonderful appreciation. And that kind of appreciation motivates the heart. Furthermore, get this, Paul knew a lot about Timothy. He had traveled with him, he had eaten with him, he had seen him in every vicissitude, struggle, trial of life. He had seen him impinged into every difficult and hard circumstance, and he still appreciated him. He thanked God for him. And so in dwelling on the memory of Timothy, he is grateful to God. Fourthly, another motivating thing that rises out of this introduction is what we'll call appeal. At the end of verse 3, he says, as I constantly remember you, and then adds, in my prayers night and day. It's almost redundant to say, I constantly remember you in my prayers night and day. You could say, I constantly remember you, period, or I remember you in my prayers night and day, period. But to say constantly and then night and day is to really make a strong emphasis. What he is saying is, Timothy, I pray for you all the time. The reason I think about you and the reason I have sweet memories is because you come up in my prayer life. I pray for you. Oh my, what a motivating thing. I constantly, that means without interruption, without ceasing. It is used in 1 Thessalonians 5:17, pray without ceasing. I constantly remind God of your needs. I plead for you. The word prayer here is diesis, petition, pleading to God on Timothy's behalf. I'm pleading to God for you. I'm praying for you. Night and day. I don't know whether night and day could be separated in a dungeon. I don't know, maybe the two are indistinguishable, but what Paul means is all the time I remember you and all the time I pray for you. That was just his heart. If you read his epistles, you'll see how many times he says, I unceasingly pray for you. He said it to the Romans, the Roman church, the Corinthian church, the Philippian church, the Colossian church, the Thessalonian church, and also to his friend Philemon. And here to Timothy, I pray for you all the time, night and day, constantly. Do you know how compelling that is on the heart of a young man? Do you know how compelling that is to a disciple to know somebody is constantly praying for him? Not only does it unleash the power of God, for the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much, James says in chapter 5 verse 16, but it also acts as a compelling force in the life of the young man to know that the saint of God, the saintliest of all saints, daily prays for him. You want to influence someone for Christ? You want to move someone's heart in great ways? You want to hold them accountable for how they live? Put them under authority. Let them know that you have an altruistic spirit that seeks their best. Appreciate them, and then remind them that you never stop praying for them, and see if that doesn't motivate their heart. Fifthly, and this is beautiful, affection. Affection. Verse 4. As I constantly remember you in my prayers night and day, longing to see you. I miss you, Timothy. I miss you. He wants him to come. He says that in chapter 4. Make every effort to come to me soon, verse 9. Verse 21, make every effort to come before winter. Timothy, please hurry. He really wants to see him. The word longing is an intense word. Epipatheo means to have a strong desire for, to yearn for. It's a compound word, intense in its meaning. He hurts because he wants so much to be with Timothy. And what is it that comes to his mind, even as I recall your tears? The last time we were together, you wept. When was the last time they were together? We can't be sure, but it's likely that sometime between when he had placed Timothy in Ephesus and left there and written back 1 Timothy and this letter, he had visited Ephesus in